We are stoked.
I'm a terrible sore loser. I don't follow the rules.
All the bearded guys seem to lie. Yeah.
There are rumors galore.
I am so up and down in my emotions right now.
Retain salad.
Okay. Where there is smoke, there is always fire, etc., etc., etc.
You don't do it.
Been there, done that.
And we'll get into it later.
They know crap about hockey.
Come on. Well, I laugh it off.
I have no issue.
Here's the thing, though. I have nothing to do.
I'm okay with this deal.
There was no other option.
So now you have nothing.
We already blew it.
Win now, win now.
It paid off.
I will eat my pants.
Hey guys, it's Two Guys in Hockey Talk. I'm Pavel the Cat Sigmund, and I've got my beautiful co-host,
Rev and Evan Reynolds. Glad to be back for another Two Guys and Hockey Talk. I'm actually surprised you called me beautiful today. You must be in a good mood. Looking behind you, looking behind me, I thought it was a blue kind of day.
Yeah, it's been kind of bluey in the NHL, so I figured we have the Blues and the Toronto Maple Leafs. You know, they've got some blues with that loss to the Montreal Canadiens. But hey, go Golfers, what a man. But Evan, we've got a jam-packed show tonight. Once again, we want to thank ASAP Network for sponsoring us and allowing us to be on the show. They're a great partnership. If you haven't checked them out yet, go ahead and check out their Facebook page. Go ahead and like, subscribe, and share. We're going to be on there all these episodes. We're hoping to continue that partnership and grow some more. And remember to follow, like, share, and subscribe our shows. But let's get started. First, get a Revy. You got a bevy?
A bevy for the Revy. Woo!
Bevy for the Revy, right? We're not going to start that trend because that just sounds awful.
Well, hey, since I got my jersey on, KHL, baby, KHL. Let's talk about the Olympics. Let's start with the men, move into the women. Let's go non-NHL to start today's show. So just so you guys all know, if you're following, you're new to us here at Two Guys in Hockey Talk, you're not that familiar with our show, we like to talk all things hockey. That means nothing's out of bounds, or we should say nothing is in the penalty box. We accept all conversations, roller hockey, ball hockey. We haven't done it yet, but I'd love to bring in a bunch of boys talking old street hockey one day. That would be fun, talking about some of our best memories, but they got to be cool stories attached to those. So I thought, let's talk about the men in the Olympics that just completed and talk about this because I actually was wrong, and I will admit it. I'm wrong once every 4 or 5 shows. I have something that I did not predict correctly. I thought the KHL meaning the Russian league, who has the most players that were put into this whole thing, including Canadians and all over. But I thought the Russians should walk away with this, and they didn't, Pavel. So update us on what happened, man, in the men's part of the Olympic men's ice hockey.
Well, I want to congratulate Team Finland for taking gold and winning, right? I mean, Team Russia, congrats on getting silver. But, I mean, Finland, they have a great young program up there. They've been rocking it. They won the juniors a few years back. They have a lot of talents. I know Patrick Laine was interviewed about some of those players on there, and, you know, he couldn't pinpoint the best one. And I know he would have probably represented that team if he was there at the Olympics with the NHL, but credit where credit's due. And as a side note, I do want to give credit to Slovakia for beating out, who was it that they played? Sweden. And sorry, so many games in my head. You know, and taking it, I believe it was 2-0, if I recall. And they were playing very well. And the celebratory parties afterwards in the locker room from some of the videos were phenomenal. So we've got some new champions, new crowns. You know, and for Team Russia, you gotta wonder what was lacking. Was it defense? Was it, you know, just the pressure? Was it goaltending? Which we all know goaltending in Russia has been elite. They've produced some incredible goaltenders in the last little bit. But what are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, let's give a hats off to Finland being the first first ever gold medal at the men's Olympics hockey. So kudos to them. Okay, so I'm going to give you guys an interesting fact. Anyone that follows hockey usually is familiar with the save percentage of goalies. The Finland goalie had a 950. I'm going to say that again. He stopped 95% of every puck that was shot on net. That save percentage, now I know it was a short amount of games because they only played 7, but still, having a 950 save percentage, a goalie wins you the tournament. Now, Sweden had a 932 save percentage, so I'm going to say this tournament was decided by goaltending, man. Yeah, baby. That's what I'm going to give you. But on the goal scoring part, if you think about this, the goal scoring, so Finland comes in 1, 2, and 4 for top goal scorers, and all of them scored 7 points. Only Adam Tambellini of Canada finished with 7 as well, but 7 points in 7 games, it's not a lot in ice hockey, especially in the Olympics, when you're playing some teams that aren't as good. But the goalies were outstanding, brother.
You would think that Russia would want someone like a Shesterkin or a Vasilevsky behind the net because their numbers are pretty solid this season with their respective clubs. So, yeah, I mean, props to Finland for coming out playing hard, tight grinding game, and they got it done. And sometimes it's one game, that's all you need just to prove yourself. And Team Finland did it. So I'm excited to see what happens with Finland moving forward. Go ahead.
What do you think is going to happen in Russia? Is this going to be an issue that they had a fairly strong team where the favorites, they haven't been winning as often in the World Championships and in the gold medal games, and they're not coming out as victorious, and they want superstardom. They want to be the team internationally. I mean, for many in Russia, winning the Olympic gold medal and or the World Hockey Championship is the number one thing, even more than having players go to the NHL and win the Stanley Cup.
100%. It definitely will raise some eyebrows, raise some questions about development, team dynamics, play. I mean, they're still producing excellent players in the KHL. I mean, so many things could have gone wrong. There could have been injuries. COVID could have gotten in with some players. It's so hard to say. I would say for this Olympics, it's a one-off just because of the nature of the beast of what the Olympics were this year. And politics aside, it's just, it was very unique conditions for everyone. We saw the game with, which we talked about our previous episode, so make sure to check it out. The women's Team Russia and Canada playing with masks. That changed the dynamic. Not saying they can't play like that. I'm saying the circumstances under which you're playing are completely different than your typical hockey game, right? There wasn't as many fans in the building. Would that change if you had, fandemonium in the stands? And you know how that gets people riled up in the NHL right now as you see it between Canadian and American markets. So it definitely will raise some questions, but I don't think that they were able to produce the best product on the ice. And unfortunately, without the NHL there, it's tough to send your best because the NHL has the best.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay, well, hey, the women's, congratulations to Team Canada and Team USA for the gold and silver game. It was a fabulous game, just fabulous. Okay, so I'm going to let you comment a little bit about women's hockey even around this, outside of this. So mentioning that, I just want to give a couple stats out. First of all, 8 out of the top 10 goal scorers were Team Canada. It's a first. And the top 6 were all Canadian. And Sarah Nurse, she is the sister of Darnell Nurse, who is
cousin.
It's cousin. Sorry.
Kia is his
sister, who is the basketball player. Yes. So another cousin. It runs in the family. Great. I just got corrected by Pavel, who knows absolutely nothing about hockey. So you guys might as well stop listening to the show. No, we've been teaching them. But Sarah Nurse led the way with 18 points in 7 games. Yeah. And she was the first woman who was black to win gold in the Winter Olympics women's ice hockey. That is a great milestone to be able to put out forth for all the other young ladies that are aspiring to move into hockey. Which we want to get more time on. We're hoping to get some women, even from the Professional Women's Hockey Association, in on our show to talk more, because women's hockey has taken off.
Yeah, yeah. There's definitely a want and a desire in the public eye, and again, I'll reuse this word pandemonium for wanting to watch women's hockey. And I think you could tell that it grew. And I mean, they talked about how it was one of the highest viewed series this year for 3.54 million viewers, which is more than any other NHL game this season. So NHL, Gary Bettman, take notes, because clearly people are watching women's hockey and they love it, and the NHL needs to get invested and start funding and sponsoring women's hockey, because we really need to see more of it.
Absolutely.
And this is not to take away from what some of the other teams did. Team USA played elite, Team Sweden, Team Russia, like all these women teams, they got girls all around the world excited, and boys. And I am excited to see the next generation of stars that are going to come in because of people like Sarah Nurse, because of Marie Poulin, who come out and shown that they are capable and they can play very well and at an elite level and make it fun. I was honestly glued to the TV watching that series, and I was more invested in that than I was in hockey that night for the NHL. Just how fun it was to cheer them on. So props to them. We'd love to have a Canadian women's player on the show or a broadcaster to talk more about that, because it's a growing sport. It's a growing demand. Sponsors are going to get involved. And why not? It's a good, booming business.
Absolutely. So I just want to mention, if you guys aren't familiar or do not know, and you just catch us through another page on Facebook or on YouTube, again, like, follow, share us anywhere on our Two Guys in Hockey Talk. If you're following us on All Sports, All Play Sports Network, definitely you can follow us on all the social media platforms as well. But on our page specifically, on our Two Guys in Hockey Talk page for Facebook, you will see some of these things we're talking to you about today. We posted throughout the week. We always throw stuff out there. And one of the things we talked about that I mentioned is, what if, and I put this out on my Twitter, by the way, you can follow me at Revenev. If you want to follow on Instagram, you can follow my co-host here at Color Avenue. But my partner, Pavel the Cat, only posts about cats. That's it.
They're the best.
He's trying to claw his way into hockey, but it hasn't yet worked. So you can go follow him, and then just for fun, unfollow him. It's perfectly okay. But anyway, I wanted to say that I actually think, like the NBA has the WNBA, what if the NHL had the WNHL, a women's national hockey league that was sponsored by the same team? So let's just say the New York Rangers, the St. Louis Blues, the Los Angeles Kings, etc., so if there's losses, they can absorb them within the overall business of those teams. But finding teams maybe in larger markets where you have the mass, so that you can at least have, say, 8,000 to 10,000 fans out per game, being able to, and even if their season is a shortened season, what a great start to really build the game. Because the truth is the more that it becomes more international with local teams, not just the Professional Women's Association is going great, but it's all owned by one group. This is where I wonder that independent, if now might be the time. And we're hopefully going to get a couple people on that can talk to us more about this in the weeks ahead.
Well, and my only comment to that, and this could be a mini rant that we have once we have every week, as you know, is if Gary Bettman can sponsor the Arizona Coyotes in that situation, they could definitely sponsor women and sell out more tickets than the Arizona Coyotes. And no offense to the fans, I'm sure there are a lot of Arizona fans who love that team, bleed those colors, and they follow their team religiously. But to tell me that you're going to allow a 5,000 seat arena at ASU, but not allow women's hockey to have about 10,000 people, which I guarantee you can sell out, I don't buy it.
Okay, so I haven't done my checking here. We're in a little mini rant this week now. We're jumping ship just for a moment. talking about attendance, I'd like to know. We have, by the way, a lot of about 47 to 51% back and forth each week. Our viewership are Americans, which is amazing. I want to thank you, America, for following these Western Canada brothers co-hosting Two Guys on Hockey Talk.
And we want to
sharing.
congratulate you on President's Day because you just had it.
Woo! Hey, good for you guys. Okay, so one of the states, so the main states that are following Two Guys in Hockey Talk are, and one of them is Florida, New York, and then New York and Nevada. That's the three top ones. So, and California comes in fourth. So out of those states, if you are from another state, I see Michigan's been picking up recently. You know, not too bad, not too bad. Massachusetts is coming up. But here's the thing I want to say. If you're from Florida and you know these numbers, can you give me the statistics for the attendance for the Miami Panthers? Because they really are the Miami Panthers, not Florida. I wish they would call them Miami, not the Florida. It would give more, I think, to the name, but I don't think they'll ever change now. So here's my thing. I'd like to know, because my understanding is not long ago, you guys had a hard time selling tickets. There was your basic faithful. Now, Florida is an incredible team right now. We'll be talking more about them in the weeks ahead, a little bit here and there. But, I mean, they struggled with attendance, but nobody really talks much about that like they do in Arizona. And I think the difference has just been ownership. Ownership, they may not have the people and the attendance, but they always find a way to not be in the news at least.
Well, we also want a winning product. You know, you saw what the Tampa Bay Lightning did in the last few years since their inauguration into the season. And, you know, they've won 3 Stanley Cups so far. They've gotten people excited. And now you have a battle of Florida. So now you have, you know, Tampa Bay versus Florida. They're exciting. Both teams are winning. They're playing elite. Playoffs should be fun. One of the best series last year, again, was Tampa Bay and Florida. And, you know, moving forward, when you have a winning club, it attracts people to go watch, right? You know, in Canada, you guys may know, in the States, we will religiously follow any team the same way you guys follow NFL teams, regardless of how well they're doing. I'm looking at you, Dallas Cowboys, you know, the Toronto Maple Leafs of the NFL, right? But people still buy tickets and are season ticket holders, and they still rock it.
So,
at the end of the day, you want a winning product. Go ahead.
Just pulled up this season's attendance. Now, it's not really fair because some Canadian teams are hit with restrictions. But Tampa Bay is leading the way in 24 games with an average attendance of 19,092. Washington is second with 18,570. Minnesota 18,500. Chicago at 18,111. Vegas at 5 at 1882. So just coming down here, trying to look to see where we are. Florida, this isn't bad. They've been averaging 14,011 every game this year. So that is actually very exciting. Arizona this year has been averaging 11,600, while Buffalo has been averaging 8,600.
Buffalo's struggling, but they've got some work to do to recoup that market.
So you know what? Let's devote a show, because I think one of the reasons is ownership. So we need to devote a part of a show to ownership and bring someone in, and let's talk about the ownership of franchises and how much it makes a difference. So, okay.
100%.
All right. Hey, before we go to something else here, I want to just take us to a quick little fun fact about hockey. Okay, guys, you ready? As legend has it, when hockey was played in its very first early days and created, I want you to know that a frozen patty of cow poop was used as the puck. Isn't that insane?
Is it because you were alive to play that game and that's why you know that?
Fun fact, look it up. Cow poop, a frozen patty of cow poop, was the first puck used in the earliest invention of hockey on the pond.
I know we usually don't swear on the show, but no shit.
All right, you know what? We like to talk about different teams. there is a
Yes.
team that we have not talked about in quite some time. Let's take a
Yes.
little time and talk around this team right now. And that
All right.
is way over in northeastern United States, the New Jersey Devils. So let's talk about them. What do you think about these guys? What's your thoughts on their game this year? How the team's been building? What's your quick thoughts on this here, Pavel?
So, you know, New Jersey has had a long history of having some great success in the mid 2000s. You know, Martin Brodeur is probably one of the best goalies out there. You guys can agree to disagree. Probably top three just of what he's done. You know, there's people who have talked about Patrick Eliash and what he did for that team. Scott Stevens playing for that team. Really solid built guy. Really like strong defender. What I find interesting about New Jersey is that it seems like that rebuild has been going a little bit longer, and there's no big changes that have happened. There's no strides that have been taken by that team this year that I thought maybe there'd be a bit more competition. Now, they went out and got a big fish in free agency, Dougie Hamilton, and of course, Carolina wasn't going to pay him that big money, but he got that big money, and all the power to him. I never... dispute any player who's going to get big bucks. I definitely would want my own big bucks. But really, apart from Jack Hughes, who has been electrifying, and Nico Hischier, who's been a very solid two-way forward center for them, you know, and was named captain, that team has really had a hard time taking its strides. Now, you know, they have Mackenzie Blackwood as a backup goalie, or as their main goalie, who was considered potentially as a backup for Team Canada, provided the Olympics were happening. And of course, there was some issues with vaccines. But really, there hasn't been much there. And, you know, they went through a few pickups. You know, they got Ryan Graves in a pickup from Colorado in a trade just before the expansion draft. You know, so you thought that, you know, on the back end, they're pretty solid, you know. They have Ty Smith, who's an up-and-coming defenseman, and I think he's going to be a top solid four guy. I think he's great, but he's still taking some time to develop. You have PK Subban, who's on his last year of his contract, and last year he kind of had a downfall, but, you know, this year he's been solid, you know, doing some slew foots, which was not exactly the prettiest, you know, and I think he needs to cut that out, and I think he has.
Yeah.
You know, but really, like, there's not really much going on. And I know there's talks now of even trading Pavel Zacha. I mean, what a great player with an amazing name. How can you not love that guy? And he's potentially going to Vancouver. He's been linked to Vancouver. But really, there's not really much going on. And for whatever reason, it's ebb and flow with New Jersey. And I'm wondering, is it coaching? It can't be, because they've gone through quite a few coaches. And all those coaches have gone on to be successful for other teams, like John Hines, you know, and I believe it's Lindy Ruff who's there, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And Lindy Ruff is an excellent coach, but for some reason they're struggling. You know, they're not in the top 15 for PowerPoint points, for penalty kill. Like they're weak there. And I'm wondering, Evan, what it is that you can fix, because I thought they'd take strides this year and compete. Now, granted, that Atlantic area is very, very challenging. Is it Atlantic or Metro? Atlantic, yeah.
Atlantic, yeah.
Yeah. And so, you know, you wonder to yourself, what's next for the New Jersey Devil? What are they going to do? They keep making these big splashes in the summer, always one big free agent that they get, but it doesn't turn out to anything. And they have a lot of good core pieces, don't get me wrong. And they have a lot of good prospects coming up, but it just seems like there's just a staleness for it to move to the next step.
Yeah. Well, and something interesting about, I mean, the franchise, we're talking how many years they've been struggling now, of course, right? But like, I want you guys to think about this. So they entered in the later of the 80s is when they became, or was it mid 80s is when they became entered the NHL. They came from the Kansas City Scouts. Now listen to this though, or the Colorado Rockies. Sorry, Kansas City Scouts, Colorado Rockies, then over to become the New Jersey Devils. So something interesting. I want you guys to recognize this. The New Jersey Devils. Let's give them their due in Stanley Cup lore. So they have won 3 Stanley Cups. They have been in 5 Stanley Cups. They are the 10th. They have the 10th most cups, and they have been in the Stanley Cup Finals the 9th most times out of all 32 franchises or along the history. That's amazing. I mean,
some great Hall of Famers.
Yeah, but now they've been struggling. They've had 5 top 10 selections in the last 6 years, and this year they're probably going to be in top 10 again. That's going to give them 6 within 7 years. Only 1 year, and that was because they made it to the playoffs when Brett Hall was their MVP.
Taylor Hall.
What did I said? Brett Hall.
Brett
Oh my
Hall.
Goodness! I'm going to be honest. I took a nice dip in the hot tub before I came on the show, so I'm definitely feeling relaxed, and it's obviously showing. I'm not on my game. Thank you again.
Are you still thinking about cow puck poop?
Oh shit. Okay, so let's explore what's happening. In goal for them. Since the legendary Martin Brodeur, they've really never found that goalie. They were hoping for that in Corey Schneider, so they have had nothing really since 2015 that way. They've had 16 different goalies in the last 6.5 years. 16 different goalies. And only 3 of those goalies, you'll notice me with my save percentages, have actually registered higher than a 910 during their tenure with the team. And some have only 30 and 42 games in that.
And to give our listeners a little bit of idea, you need at least between 915 and 920, 25 in order to compete in the playoffs, even just to get in.
Yeah, exactly. Actually. And then on defense, which they've been working hard on, only this year, only the Seattle Kraken have conceded more goals than the Devils this year. And that just falls right in line with the last 3 seasons when basically New Jersey, they were 6th place overall and the worst for goals allowed. I mean, it's been absolutely crazy. And if you think about this, like you said, they brought Dougie Hamilton in. Now, of course, he's been affected this year because he's been out about 12 games or so. Right now, he's on LTIR. But so they brought in Ryan Graves, Thomas Tatar, as mentioned, Jonathan Bernier. They were hoping could be able to do a little bit more than he's actually done. But they haven't finished higher than 5th in their division. I know it's got harder, but what is the issue? And so I know a lot of people, they've changed around GMs, they've changed around coaches. And I really don't have an answer because players are going to sign there. People like it there. The fans, while they don't have as many core fans overall, they can still fill that stadium. They're rabid fans. They're great fans out there. In fact, one of the first games, Ellenbogen, when he came on our show, he shared that was his first place when Vegas came to play the New Jersey Devils. He got a chance to see a game, just loved it, and started falling in love with the NHL. So we know that fans are developed there. Players are coming out of there, Newark and a whole bunch of places. So my question to you guys as the fans in the comment sections, if you're listening to us live right now, comment. What do you think is the problem with the New Jersey Devils? How do they fix this? Because Pavel, I'm going to say, I don't know how they're going to fix this, except this is their chance with the offseason for free agency because PK Subban's salary is coming right off.
Yeah. So unless he goes at the trade deadline, yes.
Yeah, and I don't think he is unless they're going to get another first-round draft pick because they're going to have to eat 50% of that. Who's picking them up otherwise, right? And it's pretty hard for a team that's going to compete to pick up 50% of a salary. Basically, anyone who has $6 million or more is going to have a difficult time because they can only eat 50% of a salary for the rest of the year, right? So that means you're going to take on $3 million, unless you're going to take a bad player from them who's getting overpaid.
Yeah.
And then you're going to have to pay to keep the salary, and you're going to have to pay to send a bad contract the other way.
I don't know how you guys fixed this situation because, I mean, the New Jersey Devils were supposed to be competitive. Maybe not make the playoffs, but, you look at the trajectory of what the Red Wings are doing, and you would think that they would be around the same level. And they've got some, first-round picks out there, and for whatever reason, it's just – I don't know if it's just they're a few players away or if it's development issue. I mean, you guys can let us know, but I want New Jersey to succeed. I think they have a winning culture there, and alluded to that a little bit earlier. But really, they won't make the playoffs this year. Can they even make the playoffs next year? It's a tough division, right? One of the toughest. So
it really is, and it's going to be like that, I think, for a little while. So, interesting, eh?
They do have cap space, so that is something. On top of also, like, even with Subban leaving, they will have cap space, but they're going to have to re-sign some of their guys. Jack Hughes. I don't know if he re-signed, but Nicky Heischer. Mackenzie Blackwood is going to have to resign. Ty Smith's going to want a payday, so that number is going to go real quickly.
Yeah, actually, I think they're okay with Nico because they just re-signed him, right? $7+ million. So, but
so they're good there. But I think Jack Hughes he's an electrifying player, and he's brought a lot to that team.
Well, after the trade deadline near the end of the year, we'll talk about free agency because right now there is a lot going on around before the trade deadline coming up. We still got some weeks away, but it's heating up. It's out there everywhere. Teams are trying to decide who's a buyer, who's a seller, Pavel. Yeah. And so what we're going to do is we're not going to so much. We might folks say, hey, he's a UFA, so chances are they're going to trade him because they're going to be a seller, get something out of this, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So before we go into that, I do want to mention to everyone, I have said that I do predict this year that the Tampa Bay Lightning will become the first 3-time Stanley Cup champion back to back, a three-peat since the New York Islanders dynasty days, because not even the Edmonton Oilers of their dynasty of 5 and 6 actually could even come close. So, okay, here we go. Or is it 5 and 7? Sorry, my apology. So, the Tampa Bay Lightning have no cap space. They have some players on really good deals.
Yeah.
I see nobody that they can get rid of to give cap away to take some on. So I will go out and say, other than a player who's worth $700,000, $900,000 in or out on a fourth line or a third pairing, which I doubt will happen on the back end, they have no cap space and very little for next season. And I do not think they will make a move at the trade deadline other than futures.
I think there's going to be, maybe not with Tampa Bay, a few more three-way trades in the NHL at the trade deadline, just for teams to take on contract. Now, I know Toronto recently made some minor trades with Arizona too, Carter Hutton going down there for future considerations, and of course, sending Nick Ritchie down there for his one more year of $2.5 million for Lyubushkin, who's a right-handed defenseman. He's not the flashiest guy, and he can't put up a lot of points, but he's a steady at-home defenseman. We're looking at you, Nima Leinen, here in Edmonton, something similar, big guy who does what does, as well as a potential draft pick, either in 2023 or 2025 or 2024, I think it was. It was like third round or second round. So the trade should be on our website.
Yeah.
But, so there definitely will be some three-way trades. I think Tampa Bay will play it smart because it's what got him the last 2 Stanley Cups. And I will say, if Tampa Bay does this, not only does it solidify him as a dynasty, and Sean Fire would love that, but it also highlights the importance and value of this season, given the chaos that's been around it.
Yeah.
But not to mention, now we have 32 teams in the NHL. You are battling out with 31 other teams throughout an 82-game schedule, which was chaos this year, and props to the NHL makers who made that. And you have won it in a full 82-game season. And it's not to take away from last year's season. It just, when it's shortened and limited and stuff like that, it's a little bit different when you play 56 games because you're not as tired. Injuries do still happen, but maybe, it's a little harder. And really, you can't really move anything around. And Kucherov has been playing solid for that team. So,
yeah. Exactly. And actually, you bring up a good point, Pavel, in just saying that. Because the first year they won the Cup, it was in the bubble. So the season was interrupted by a big chunk of time. And then when they came back, they did the bubble, which is very different. And then last year, a shortened season. So this year, there was a stoppage. Yeah, we got players going in and out everywhere. But being a full season, I really do believe that if they don't win this year, there will always be that little asterisk people in their minds will put in about the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Yeah.
Should they win, I think it'll remove the asterisks. Not to mention, I will say though, unfortunately, because it's during COVID, it probably would be considered the COVID dynasty because people, and especially New York Islander fans, correct me if I'm wrong if you're an Islander fan of old, you're going to have a hard time saying these guys were as good as the Islanders of old. Frankly,
I think anybody.
I think they're close, man.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. And we're not trying to diminish that, it's easy to win the Stanley Cup because it was still hard, regardless of whether it was the last 2 years of what the conditions were.
Yeah.
This is my thing when people say, oh, well, it's a COVID Cup. You're only dealt with the situation you are given.
Yeah.
And so if that's what you win, and people talk about that, well, they're, like the Calgary fans, they like to applaud them for on a 10 game winning streak. Well, they only played the bottom feeder teams. You're only given the teams that you're playing against. You can't have Tampa Bay, Carolina, Florida, Minnesota, Colorado every night. Sometimes you got to play those teams. And let's not say that, maybe there's some parity in the NHL, but when you're up against an LA, they're still going to bring their A game. Arizona and Montreal. Montreal recently beat Toronto 5-2. Nobody expected that, right? Toronto as limited. So there's still that competitiveness, and no player wants to lose to be like, well, we're tanking for the number one pick. We're going to compete. We're going to play. I'm going to prove myself because I represent this logo and this team and this dynasty or this history.
Exactly, right? So, okay, let's talk about some different potentials. You kind of mentioned a couple in passing. Yeah. Let's go through. Ben Sherrod. I mean, he's talked about everywhere. Formerly of Winnipeg, now is playing in Montreal. He is a 31-year-old defenseman. Some believe he's going to fetch a first-round pick. To me, that's overpay, man, for Ben Sherrod to a 31-year-old D that's on an expiring UFA contract. If they trade him early, there will be no first-round pick. If there's desperation in the last day and the moments of the last hours of trade deadline, maybe he could fetch it. So there's now, of course, there is talk they want to trade him early, and the reason is because they don't want to risk injury. He should be back by the end of the week here, and so who knows? I mean, they haven't given an exact day because they don't want a serious injury because you lose your asset, right? And then you lose him.
He's also had a difficult season. I think he lost his father at the beginning of the season, so he had to sit out, or there was a personal family issue. So, our condolences there because that was tough. And that on any player, as you know, it can really take people out, right? And if you don't get into a groove of things, it's hard to get going. And then with COVID, that's another thing that could slow you down, right? You could train all you want, but unless you're on the ice, and we're looking at you, Jack Eichel, it takes a little bit for you to go. And props to Jack Eichel for even getting a goal and 2 assists. Like it took him a bit in the first game, and he seems great. I'm hoping that that surgery helps him continue to play and be impactful for Vegas. But that's the thing. It's once you're out of it, it's hard to get back into it, and you can tell when a team's off for a long time.
Yeah, well, and that's what makes Mario Lemieux's comeback from Hodgkin's disease, from his back surgeries, even that much better, where the guy just scored at will, even coming back, because it's not easy. It doesn't matter who you are. Even Crosby, he still didn't. When he left, he was scoring at a horrendous pace. It was, when I mean horrendous, I mean in a good way. It was one of his best seasons when he ended up being knocked out during the Classic with that concussion. But absolutely point. I'm going to say, so I know the Blues, the Bruins, the Panthers, the Rangers are all involved potentially in some. I could see him going to the Rangers, but I believe the St. Louis Blues are making the biggest push possibly for him, but I still don't see a first-round draft pick.
Interesting. Yeah, it will be definitely interesting because there's also rumblings about the goaltending in St. Louis to see what's going to happen. Is Husso going to be traded, or are they going to go back to Bennington, who helped them win their Stanley Cup in 2019, right? I mean, he's signed for 6x6, and he's in his first year of his contract, and he hasn't had the best numbers, and he just seems to want to get in a fight with everybody he comes into.
Okay, so mentioning the Blues, let's go to there with some potential movement that could happen. So
Right.
Husso could be traded. If he is, I see Edmonton as the number one suitor trying to pick up Husso. It would be a perfect pickup for them. And chances are they would give up that first round, I think, if they could get Husso. Probably the only guy that would actually warranty that. So let's talk about this, though. Would you give up? Because if Binnington's struggling, you got Husso to go to, who's got a better save percentage. Even if Binnington signed for the next years, you can make a go and make a run. You want to get the cup.
Yeah.
If they make a push, and if the St. Louis Blues can get themselves someone who's been very sought at, we talked last week, actually, Pavel brought attention. I know Philadelphia doesn't want to hear about this, but Claude Giroux in a St. Louis Blues uniform could actually equal a Stanley Cup.
Possibly, yeah. I could definitely see that happening.
And if they get Giroux, I see them hanging on to the goalie. If they don't get him and they just pick up someone, maybe like I'm trying to remember Justin. I'm trying to remember the last name. Not Justin Hall, over in Colorado. Falk? No, Justin Falk. No. Looking for a defenseman for St. Louis out of Colorado. I'm trying to remember. He's a younger guy. Shoot. I've lost it. It was just on the top of my head as I was talking.
Just look it up.
So, yeah, well, you look it up. You see who's there.
No, you look it up. So I will say...
Justin Barron.
Oh, Barron.
If they could pick up someone like Justin Barron from the Avalanche, which may only be available for a better player, so I don't even know if that's possible between St. Louis and Colorado, which I doubt. But I will say there is more names starting to be suitors for Claude Giroux. They're crazy names, and we know some of them will not go at all. For example, but the number one spot it's always talked about is the Avalanche, preparing and bringing him in. Is that even possible? You add that in. I mean, that I think that's instantly takes them to be the favorite in the West. Vegas, which we know they have no more money. There's no way that's happening. They just brought Eichel back. Edmonton would do it in a heartbeat, but Edmonton has no way to move the money to be able to bring, and they might pay the assets. But again, would they pay the assets? Holland says
not
that
for
he's
a rental.
not for a rental. I mean, even though you're all in, who knows? But there's no way that we know that's happening. So St. Louis is probably the number one. But I want to throw a team out to you as a possibility in the free agency we'll talk about later in a couple months for next year, for him to not come back to Philly. And I know Philly fans will hate this, and people will say it never happened, but it happened with Mark Recchi, happened with Rick Tocchet. That is the Pittsburgh Penguins. Could he sign a 2-year contract in the last years with Malkin, especially if he resigns, where he could play with Crosby and Malkin on a couple years, maybe at a better price because he's made his money. But so anyway, here's your wild card. So I think St. Louis or the Wild. If the Wild can find a way to do it, I could see them making the push.
I'm going to give you a prediction. Although it may not come true, but I could see Minnesota making a push for it because Bill Guerin is bold and he makes bold choices. Watch him push for Joe Pavelski from Dallas Stars. He's a playoff performer. He's on his last year of his contract. I believe it's around $5.5 million. When he signed that, people were complaining about, he's too old, he can't perform. Joe Pavelski has been one of the best players for the Dallas Stars and putting up points with, I believe it's Nick Robertson's brother, the Robertson brother. It's escaping me, Jamie Robertson or something like that. He's been performing very well on that line. So watch Minnesota try to get on top of all the scoring they already are getting. Right, Minnesota and Colorado are the teams to beat in the West. That's my prediction.
So I will say I do know, Joe Pavelski is like a fine wine. He just gets better with time. But I do not think that he will leave actually Dallas. There's talk
Oh,
that
but
he's
Dallas
resigned.
isn't. Dallas is fighting for a playoff spot. They may not make it.
Yeah, but even if they don't, I believe he has a no trade clause. I didn't look that up, but you can check. I think he gets to determine if he goes, and I don't think that he's going to move it. I believe he just wants to stay stood, and he loves Dallas. Absolutely, he didn't even want to originally leave San Jose. It was just
No, he
because
didn't.
of the
Yeah.
it was the shakeup, right? And so anyway, I just got this feeling. It's just a gut. Haven't other than there have been talks that he doesn't want to leave, and he has made a statement around Dallas about that. So, but who knows, right? So we'll see. And I was gonna say, if Giroux goes to the Avalanche, I could see it being a first round draft pick and their prospect Justin Barron.
Yeah.
And Justin Barron is a very high prospect for them. And that would probably be, if they can get the first round, maybe even next year's. I'm not sure what Colorado has. And Justin Barron, that could be something that could help the Flyers rebuild.
Yeah, the Flyers are definitely in a rebuild. I mean, I know Chuck Fletcher talked about it. They're trying to make the playoffs again next year, and they're going to have a little bit of cap space, but they've signed a few guys to long-term big deals, and I know they're taking calls on people like Travis Konechny and a few others. Again, Jamie Basko is a great insider for them, so if you have any questions, follow him on Twitter. But really, I don't know what the Flyers are right now, and they need to figure it out. They need a full season of Ellis. We did talk about them a few weeks back, but it's tough.
Yeah, Justin Braun. I was going to say Justin Braun. He's UFA. He makes 1.8. So consider two teams in on the Justin Braun depth defenseman. Doesn't make too much. They could give up something, and they can get something out of him because he's probably not returning next year. Is the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Edmonton Oilers. Those are two places you could look at Justin Braun being traded to if one of those teams can make that work for depth defensemen for the playoff run.
Now, you were chatting a little bit about goaltenders and potential destinations. So I think that Washington is in the market for a goaltender. I don't think they're comfortable with what they have currently. I know they tried to get Fleury, and Fleury it's been rumblings that he doesn't want to play for Washington given the history between Pittsburgh and Washington.
Yeah.
But watch them potentially try to get Husso because they can potentially do it, even though they don't have a lot of draft picks left because they're all in this year again. Or they go for Alexander Georgiev out in New York Rangers, right? I know Rangers are in the playoff spot. They can push, but they believe Shesterkin's their future. And Georgiev, there's a bit of tension with that relationship there. And I know Georgiev wants out and he wants a fresh start because he wants to be a number one somewhere else. And so look for Washington to make a push for a goaltender, wherever that may be. Now, the other team that I'm curious about, because there's been not much talk and there's not a lot of cap space for them, is the Nashville Predators on the West. What are they going to do? They are in a playoff spot. They're solid, in terms of their depth on their D. Of course, they could always improve a little bit more, but, will they go? Will they be a wild card for a Claude Giroux? Maybe they can't make it work. I don't know. Anything is possible in the NHL.
I don't even think they're making the playoff, to be honest with you.
What are you talking about? They're going to make the playoffs.
No, I think they're going to be pushed out. I don't think you're going to find them in the playoff run. We can talk in another week about who we see actually already, and they're right on that edge, in that spot right there. And I don't think Nashville's good. They've been running their goaltender. They've been going off Saros.
UC Saros.
Yeah, and they've been running off a hot goaltender this year. And I don't think it's going to continue. I don't think.
Well, they played Riddick against the Florida Panthers last night. So, and they were able to win that game. So,
yeah. So what does that mean, though? We see this happen all the time. You just mentioned Montreal also beat the Toronto Maple Leafs, which normally would never happen, right?
So let's finalize on this. Calgary, 10 games won. What does Calgary do? Do they pursue somebody wild? Calgary fans, let us know who you think. Kudos to Daryl Sutter for getting that team going and, doing what they've done. 10 wins in a row is very impressive, and they are now on top of the Pacific Division.
I think they have one more move, a depth defenseman. Maybe Justin Braun could be also in with the Calgary because of 1.8, with your salary, he might have $1 million left coming in. Take a guy, send him on waivers for $800,000-900,000. that would work right into their wheelhouse. With them picking up Toffoli, I think that set them up fairly well.
What about Johnny Gaudreau, who's on his last year of a contract? What if he doesn't perform, and he is a New Jersey boy? Do you think there's potential of him going there and potentially transitioning over there for something with New Jersey or Philadelphia or Rangers or Islanders?
Man, we're going to have some good unrestricted free agent talk, eh? Florida could maybe pick up Malkin. The Devils could maybe pick up someone like Johnny Gaudreau. Should be fun, man.
I'm predicting that Malkin's going to stay in Pittsburgh. I really don't think
do too. I don't either. Okay, we only have a few minutes left to mention a few more things. Cal Clutterbuck, I'm positive he's going to be on the move. So look at, and this could also be, if they make a Giroux, I think the Avalanche are going to look at Cal Clutterbuck. I think he'd be a perfect for the playoff run. He's 34 years old. This could be his last year, but he's going to probably draw the most interest for the team. Zach Parise, I would ask about a few people, what do I think about him? No, I don't think he's going anywhere at this stage of career. He's not a depth guy, and so he really needs to kind of be in that 6-9 role, and I don't think he's at that stage anymore. But here's something interesting. Zdeno Chara. Could they give him a chance for one more playoff push with some team and trade him to a place of his liking where he could be? And all I've ever heard, I know there's some teams that would love to get him, like Edmonton or even another team, for example. Now, would this be crazy? And it's not beyond what I could see Burke and Hextall doing. Could they find a way, if Boston's out of the playoffs or thinking this is not their year, would they trade within, because it's just for the year, his contract, could they try to get a depth defenseman with Zdeno Chara for a Penguins playoff push? Oh.
Very possible, very possible.
Now, I have heard nothing about that. There hasn't been a whisper about that. I want to say this. Please don't go, well, they just announced it on two guys and they... No, we know nothing. This is just looking at numbers and looking at possibilities and interest and just knowing what players really want to do when it comes to playing in the playoffs, playing for the Stanley Cup. Because this truly is Zdeno's last run at it.
100%. And I don't mean to not mention every single team because there's 32 and it's tough. But let's talk about Seattle quickly and how potentially Mark Giordano, their first captain ever, could potentially make a reunite with Calgary or maybe with TJ Brody out in Toronto, and...
Okay, so he can't fit in the cap in Calgary.
Why not?
Because his cap is $3 million plus.
But Seattle can retain for a first round pick.
Yeah, no, he's $6 million, so that would still be about. They'd have to take a player back worth around $2 million. Yeah, so again, and I don't think they're wanting to give up a pick. And I believe what they have on their third pairing, they consider as good as Giordano. I don't know, guys. You're Flame fans out there. What do you guys think? Do you think that you even want him back? Do you actually think maybe you guys have heard stuff about Giordano that maybe the players want him back? Would they do a swan?
Like I said, he goes to Toronto or something, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So here's a player to consider out of San Jose. I haven't heard any really specific mentions. Great depth player. So here's a player that, if he can be picked up for that center position on the fourth line. You ready? Because they're in a win now mode, you hear. The Edmonton Oilers and Nick Bonino.
Oh,
Nick
yes.
Bonino. Consider it. It's not talked about, but that could be a good depth move, and one of their struggles is on their fourth line. Yeah. If you can bring in someone like Nick Bonino. Now, hey, I think the Oilers are going to go after Braden Holtby. That's who I think their target is. I think it's Husso or Holtby, or you're not going to find another goalie coming in. I don't think that any of the other ones are an upgrade or in the save percentage. I think that Dallas wants to let go of Khudobin, but they're not going to be able. And I think it's going to be buyer's regret anyone that takes Khudobin. But also New Jersey. Now, it was mentioned early on by my co-host about Pavel Zacha.
Yeah,
it's been rumored that Edmonton could potentially like a player like him, But New Jersey has had several interests. There's local writers in Jersey that have talked about Jesse Puljujärvi. They're 1 year difference. They're 1 inch difference. The difference is there is potentially more potential in Puljujärvi. I want to call him Pool Party. Uh, in a player like him, he plays right wing, but because of his injuries, he's out for a month. About is what they're anticipating. It's going to hurt the Oilers if they could pick up someone like Pavel Zacha because he plays center and left wing, which is the problem. If they pick him up, they'd have to move someone like Zach Hyman over to the right side to do it. But he's 24 years old. He's 209 pounds. He's scored at a .46 points per game. It's a decent salary. It's going to cost him about 800 to 900,000 more on the year. Puljujärvi has been around a .38. This year, just a little bit over 0.5. Is he going to get better? How much is he going to ask for on the next contract? That would be a very interesting decision for both those teams because you're getting quite close to the same type of player, but plays a different kind of game.
Yes.
So keep your eyes open.
I mean, I've heard Zacha's name, as I said earlier, associated with Vancouver, and it seems like Vancouver is going to be sellers more likely. I know there's been calls on JT Miller. He's, been of interest to a lot of teams. I wouldn't be surprised if a team like Colorado, if they can't get Giroux, wouldn't go after somebody like a JT Miller, a grinder that can play on any line from the center or wing, and bring it in. But there's a few other guys in Brock Besser has been kind of associated with the trade rumors for Pavel Zacha back and forth, right? How would that deal would look like we would see? I know Jim Rutherford is looking at restocking up that thing. There's cabinets with all the picks. So it'll be interesting to see because there's a lot more identity of who is a seller and who is a buyer. There's not a lot of teams that are kind of like in the mix or you're like, well, maybe not. You could definitely tell which ones. There's a bit of a gap there, but it'll be an exciting see. So name your predictions below, guys. We want to hear what your team is going to potentially pick up, what you want to see your team pick up. Is there a player or a goalkeeper or a defender that you believe that your team could be better with in the lineup? And it'll be interesting. And you know who I think Edmonton may pursue? Vince Dunn out of Seattle. He's a good defender on the left-hand side there.
Yeah. Do we know his salary, what he's coming in at, though? Because that's going
to be I don't know off the top of my head.
Because I thought he signed in around $4 million. I could be off on that one, but yeah. So again, it's money in, money out. That's the hard thing that makes this difficult. We know they have interest, but can you do it? And will they take something off your hands? And it's all a matter. And a lot of Oiler fans want to say, "Come on, we got to win. We got to win." But then when you spend, you got to take a chance on a player, and you may lose, and it may not work out. So I want to mention.
I'd like to discuss this one day in the future because this is cool. We talked a little bit about Dougie Hamilton and his contract in New Jersey and Carolina not wanting to purchase it. Yeah. Do you go for the big fish and pay a buttload of money for one guy, or do you split it up like Carolina did and get yourself an Ethan Bear, a Tony DeAngelo, and split up that money between like $3 to $5 million for a couple of players instead of one big fish? Food for thought.
Yeah. You shouldn't use Ethan Bear in that mix. He's sat out.
No, I know
he got
games. Traded, but what I'm saying.
I mean he sat out. A lot of people wanted to talk about how great he was on the team. He was on the first and second lines, and then he was a healthy scratch often with it. So I know that's a sensitive topic for a lot of people in Edmonton when it comes to them trading him out and stuff like that. But I mean, hey, he's been a good player. He has still played 36 games this year. So he's only sat out 7 or 8, and he's been okay. I think he's got less than 10 points, though, in those games, which is about what his average is. But, guys, I think what Pavel is telling us is, what about not having the number one and a whole bunch of number 2s and 3s that you can have 2 for the price of 1 and have more depth, right? Yeah, exactly 100%. So. Okay, last guy I want to just mention really quick. We got to wrap up, guys. We've heard so much, where there's smoke, there's fire, we always talk about. And when it's Arizona, there's always fire. Chychrun. He's a 23-year-old left-hand defenseman. Now, I just got this today. Haven't heard this until today. Maybe some of you have heard this around. There's a lot swirling around California. The
Yes,
LA
LA.
Kings have a strong interest in Chychrun, which would make sense on this rebuild right now. But what would they give up? And it is known a lot of people are really interested in their 2017 11th overall, Gabe Velarde. He's a point per game player right now in the American, and he's had chance, basically over these last 4 years to really develop his game. Could that be a player that Arizona wants? Plus a whole bunch of, but they're gonna have to give up the house, I think, to get him. But
Yes.
I don't know, man. See, this is a player, I think, if you're a team that's where right now, maybe where you're right on that edge, you're like a Toronto. If I was Toronto, I'd be going after Chychrun. I don't know what you Maple Leaf fans think, but I think that I don't know. I don't think they're gonna. But that's a player that
and
they
especially
need.
since Jake Muzzin now is going to be out for a little bit, and your faith in Justin Hall and Travis Dermott isn't as big as you want it to be, right? Like your top pair is set, and Morgan Riley and Sundin, but the rest, Muzzin now is out for until the playoffs most likely, just because of that scary incident that just took place.
Wow.
What are you going to do?
Well, man, any last thoughts before we wrap up?
Nope, that's it. It's been an exciting show, lots to talk about, and I'm glad that you're here. You made my night better than blue.
Well, hey, I just want to say thanks again to the ASAP Network. Thanks for all of you that are new to following us here. We always ask that you like, share, follow us. Follow us, obviously, on ASAP. Follow ASAP. Follow us also. Make sure we always got to put our push in for us, number one, man. We're looking out for number one. Right on, baby. I'm Adam Cole from the AEW. Okay, guys. So anyway, it's been an exciting show. Thank you for joining us. This was episode 22 of season 3. My name is Evan Rennertz, known as Revenev, my co-host.
Pavel the Cat Zygmunt.
And on behalf of Two Guys in Hockey Talk, in the meantime and in between time,
Keep your sticks on the ice, everyone. Stay safe.
cheers.